It's Randy Orton. Oh.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.
Hey guys, Mr. Beat Late 90 here, and today I thought I would basically do SummerSlam memories, I guess. Just go through each SummerSlam chronologically, talk about stuff that I liked, and just memorable matches and moments, I guess. So yeah, that's basically the premise. So let's get started. So we obviously got to start with 1988, the first SummerSlam pay-per-view. Overall, it was a pretty, pretty solid show. You know, I mean, some of the undercard matches were a bit miss, but you had some solid matchups as well. You know, such as the opener between the British Bulldogs and the Fabulous Rogers. This was match of the night, probably. It was a very good match. Such a diverse tag team division at the time, and so many great teams. And the majority of them were really good workers, and this is a showcase of it. Also, another tag team match, Heart Foundation versus Demolition. This was really good as well. I think it's kind of underrated because of their really good match later, a couple of years later in 1990. But yeah, this was actually pretty good. I'd say it's about on par with the Bulldogs versus the Rogers. Yeah, just a very good match. More to be said, really. And then what this show is pretty much known for, the match between Ultimate Warrior and Honky Tonk Man, where Warrior squashed him in about just over 30 seconds and captured the IC title, and this would start a streak of the IC title changing hands in the first 5 SummerSlams. So yeah, that's why the IC title's got such a great history and heritage with SummerSlam, especially in the early days. So yeah, SummerSlam 88 was a pretty good show, if I'm being honest. I mean there was no like classic matchups, but there was some good stuff on here. And you know, it's not the best SummerSlam, it's not the worst. It's sort of a middle of the level kind of SummerSlam, and mainly for the history and I guess those 3 matches. I guess maybe you should check it out. Next we'll move on to 89. This was actually a pretty good show. It's quite, in terms from like other people's opinions, it's quite a mixed opinions on it. I've seen some people say this is an awful show. I've seen some people say this is one of the best. I'd say it's a pretty good show. I think what hinders it is the undercard, but you did have 3 really good matches. We had 3 really good matches on here. You had the opener with the Heart Foundation and the Brainbusters. Like, what more can be said about the tag team division from this period? It was just amazing. And you had Bret Hart, who arguably was the best worker in the WWF at this time. Him and Neidhart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Brainbusters. It was a great matchup. One of the best pay-per-view openers in the history as well, in my opinion. Anyway, we had a solid 6-man tag also, where we saw Tito Santana team the Rockers to face the Fabulous Rogers and Rick Martel. That was it. I almost forgot that. But this was a solid matchup as well. I mean, you had all guys were very good workers at this time. Kind of the epitome, workhorse mid-carders, and this was a really good matchup as well. So just a very good show for that. You also had Warrior versus Rude, the IC title. Warrior capturing the IC title back after losing it at WrestleMania 5, and Warrior would hold the belt until WrestleMania 6, where he'd drop it. Well, he'd win the WWF title and the IC title, but he'd vacate the IC title. So yeah, once again, the IC title changed hands. Also, there's the funny moment where me and Gene Okerlund's interviewing Rick Rude, and the sign falls down. That's quite funny. Anyway, that's just a funny moment as well. So yeah, SummerSlam 89, I would say is a pretty solid show. I mean, definitely kind of in the middle, but definitely high up on the middle part of SummerSlam. So yeah, I would say check this show out, definitely. Unfortunately, I can't say about the next show that it's any good. Honestly, SummerSlam 1990 is not a good show, in my opinion. I think the undercard was just so bad. Like, you had so many just awful matches that I just were really boring and poorly wrestled and executed, in my opinion. I mean, you had a really good tag team title match, however, I think that's probably the most underrated tag match in SummerSlam history. You saw The second match between Demolition and the Hart Foundation, this time 2 out of 3 falls. This was really good stuff. I would definitely say a couple of steps up from their 88 match, and just what more can be said? I think me explaining it doesn't really do it justice. You probably just have to watch it for yourself. Yeah, really good matchup. And the main event was pretty good actually. Warrior and Rude. It was only 10 minutes, which is really weird because the pay-per-view timing was like something like 2 hours 40 minutes, so it could have gone on for quite a bit longer. I think. I have no idea why it only went 10 minutes, and it was good for the time it was given. I just think it could have been a lot better. But yeah, SummerSlam 1990. Apart from those 2 matches, just awful. I mean, there's nothing really that good on here aside from those 2 matches. Just the undercard was awful. Like, you had Honky Tonk Man and Dusty Rhodes in a terrible match, and just, oh god, don't even want to get into it. But yeah, I would avoid 1990 for the most part. It's just not a good show. I would say it's the worst SummerSlam of all time, personally. But that's just me anyway. I think that's kind of one thing that kind of hinders a lot of the older SummerSlams is just the fact the mid card, a lot of it is pretty awful. Like, you know, you have random matches thrown together and stuff like that. It's just not necessarily the best. It kind of hinders a lot of these older SummerSlams. Also, I almost forgot before we move on to the next one. Roddy Piper provided commentary for 1990 as a heel commentator, and he was actually pretty enjoyable. I mean, R.I.P. Roddy Piper, and you know, it's a shame that he's gone. And you know, he was actually a very good heel commentator on this show. And Piper also commentated for this next show, 1991. This was a fun show, not as good as 89, better than 88 and 90, definitely. You had a classic matchup between Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect. This is awesome, one of the best matches in SummerSlam history. One of the best IC title matches as well. I'd say maybe there's a couple that are better, but this is up there definitely. Ted DiBiase and Virgil had a pretty good match actually. I mean, it was pretty enjoyable actually. I mean, Ted DiBiase I always think is kind of an underrated. Is one of the most underrated wrestler of the 80s and early 90s. I thought he was actually a pretty good in-ring worker, to be honest with you. And yeah, he helped Virgil look pretty good in this match actually. And yeah, it was really fun. You know, this is actually a show where the undercard isn't that bad, aside from the main event. Like, I remember LOD fought the Nasty Boys. That was a pretty solid, like, you know, street fight matchup. You had the Mountie versus Big Boss Man, I believe, in the jailhouse match. That was, I mean, the aftermath is pretty funny. You had the Mountie go to jail because he lost, and this gay guy hits on him. It's kind of funny, in my opinion. And obviously you had the match Made in Hell, which, yeah, that was awful. Just a house show match, really. And the match Made in Heaven, which was the wedding between Savage and Elizabeth. I think this is the only wedding in WWF's /E history where it's actually no interference in a wedding. But this is a good segment, great SummerSlam moment. Weirdly though, at this time, because Savage and Elizabeth had been married for quite a while beforehand, but like they got kayfabe married. And then, what was weird was at this time, because they divorced in '92, this kind of wedding thing kind of took place when they were having quite a few marital problems, I believe. So that must have been a bit kind of awkward for them at the time, but yeah, but it was a good segment nonetheless. Next we move on to the best SummerSlam of the so far. It was held at Wembley Stadium, London, England, my home country. Not hometown, because I don't live in London, I live in the suburbs outside of London. So if you don't know what a suburb is, it's basically like a place outside of a city. Yeah, so I live in a suburb, and basically I live in a county called Surrey. You can look that up if you want. If you don't know where it is, it's just like southeast of England, in case you wanted to know. But yeah, so Wembley Stadium, great venue. This was the old Wembley Stadium actually. This is the old Wembley Stadium. I think they knocked it down in when did they knock it down? I think it was either the late 90s or early 2000s, and they rebuilt Wembley Stadium. And then it was built, and then they finished it in 2008. 2007, around that time. But yeah, this was the old Wembley Stadium, and the atmosphere was great for this show. I mean, you have like 80,000 people. I know this is, and also I think this is the show where the most merchandise has been sold at an event in WWE, WWF. So, you know, that's a good fact there as well. I mean, this was a really fun show. I mean, the undercard was a bit iffy, but it's one of those shows where it was just fun to sit through, like, and you don't really care about the undercard because there's just some fun stuff on here. Like, obviously you had the WWF title match, excuse me, between Randy Savage and Ultimate Warrior. This was a good match, not quite as good as their retirement match at Mania 7, but it was really good, and I wasn't actually pissed off with the count out finish because, you know, it kind of created created a sign of respect between Warrior and Savage, because Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect interfered, and, you know, there was speculation was that both either Savage or Warrior had joined forces with Ric Flair, so they ended up messing with both of them, and they messed up the match and that sort of thing. But yeah, also you had a really fun match between. Well, I thought the opener was pretty fun. Firstly, between LOD and Money Inc. This was pretty fun in my opinion. I think obviously you had the iconic LOD motorbike entrance as well. That was pretty cool, and the match was pretty fun as well. But I think the funnest match on here is probably Shawn Michaels versus Rick Martel in the. I guess it wasn't titled this, but like the fight for Sherry's love or whatever. And, you know, it was actually a really fun match because one of the rules was neither guy could punch the other in the face, and it was just hilarious, like seeing like both, like they do a move and then they go to throw a punch, but then they had to stop because they knew they couldn't do it and stuff. And like you had Sherry like fainting and stuff, and it was just really funny, if I'm being honest. But obviously the main event made this show. This was an awesome main event, best main event in SummerSlam history. Bret Hart, the IC champion, defending against the British Bulldog, and Davey Boy comes home, wins the IC title. A great moment. Probably the best SummerSlam moment, I would say. Yeah, I would say so. Just, I mean, even, you know, Americans and people who aren't English have said this is the best SummerSlam moment. So, you know, I think I would say it's worthy. Just, you know, an awesome moment. And you had, you know, I like the storytelling element of having, you know, Diana. I think she's called Diana. Yeah, I think it was Diana. And she was watching the match, you know, because obviously Bret Hart and British Bulldog are. Sorry, I just thought I heard something then. Sorry, I just thought I heard a noise there, so that was why I stopped. But yeah, Diana, you know, wasn't sure who to cheer for because her brother Bret Hart was fighting her husband, and, you know, that was a pretty good storytelling element in my opinion. So yeah, 92 is a great show. Excuse me once again, it's got a really bad cough, but yeah, this is a really fun show. Definitely check it out. I mean, it's just some awesome stuff on here. But then we have a massive downfall with 1993. This was pretty bad. Pretty bad. I mean, you had, I'd say, probably one like match that I would say that to check out, and that was probably the 6-man tag with Tatanka and the Smoking Guns versus Bam Bam Bigelow and the Head Shrinkers. That was about it. I mean, you had Ted DiBiase's last match in the WWF, I believe, I'm not 100% sure on that. Last pay-per-view match, I would assume, against Razor Ramon. Pretty underwhelmed by that. I mean, considering who's involved, that was pretty poor. But, the most underwhelming match in SummerSlam history is on this, and it's not Razor Ramon versus Ted DiBiase, it's Shawn Michaels versus Mr. Perfect for the IC title. Cool. Talk about just underwhelming. This was... It just never really... They never really went into second gear. They just started, you know... I never really think they went, you know, full out, and they just had a really mediocre TV-style match that I was really disappointed by. So, honestly, memories from SummerSlam 1993 aren't that great, because... And, oh, God. The Lex Express. The Lex Express. Basically, Lex Luger was built up as the challenger for the WWF title against Yokozuna, and, you know, he slammed Yokozuna on that July 4th special thing. That was like his face turn, and yeah, he basically was supposed to be. He basically was the next. He was basically built as the next Hulk Hogan, because, you know, that, you know, America, the guy who's representing America and is fighting for America against the foreign champion. It's just, it didn't do much for me. And the match was pretty bad, and it was just, Luger looked like a complete idiot celebrating by winning a count out. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, SummerSlam 1993 was pretty bad, and not a very memorable show. I wouldn't really check it out if I were you. But we did have next 1994. This was, I'd say this is the most underrated SummerSlam. I mean, it's a bit like 1992. Like, I mean, the undercard's not terrible. There's some good stuff on the undercard, but there are a couple of matches that are a bit miss. But they're, this is a fun show. Like, there's one of the best SummerSlam matches in history on this card, and there's some really good stuff on it. So you had the IC title match between Razor and Diesel. This was great stuff. One of Kevin Nash's best matches. You had, I can't remember his name, but they played NFL for the Chicago Bears, I believe. And yeah, he was on the corner of Razor Ramon. Shawn Michaels in the corner of Diesel. This was a really fun match with Razor capturing the title, which was, a good moment. And obviously the women's title. This is probably I would say this is the best SummerSlam match. Women's match in SummerSlam history. This was great. I mean, Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano. I believe it's Nakano. If I said that wrong, I apologise. They had a really good matchup. Bull Nakano wasn't in the WWF for long, but she did have some pretty good matches with people like Alundra Blaze. You could really tell this time they were trying to rebuild the women's division, but they just didn't really have the talent. But bringing in Bull Nakano was a good shout, and yeah, they had a really good matchup here. Just for the stuff for the other undercard, you had like I believe it was Bam Bam Bigelow and IRS take on the Head Shrinkers. That was a pretty solid opener. Lex Luger and Tatanka. Oh, almost how did I forget to talk about this? Basically, going into this match, it was a babyface versus babyface match. But Tatanka claimed that Luger sold out to $1 Million Man, and Luger was denying it and everything. And there was like a vote of who they thought sold out. Did he sell out or not? I think majority said Luger. They thought Luger did. Then when DiBiase came out during the match, he cost Luger the match. So and then Tatanka turns and joins the $1 Million. Joins Money Inc. or $1 Million Corporation. I can't remember which one. Mine's just gone blank there, but yeah, I personally didn't really see it coming. I know obviously that's dumb because but you knew what was going to happen in hindsight and everything, but I just the crowd didn't really seem as if they were like shocked or stunned. I can imagine kids at this time were probably quite shocked, which is fair enough. Like I remember when I watched, I believe it was Lundrick's. It must have been Lundrick's SummerSlam '94 review. He said he was shocked when he saw it, but he was 8 years old. So I think it was one of those things where, like, more kind of smart mark fans at this time probably knew it was coming, but kids and casual fans are probably very shocked. So yeah, honestly, I don't know. The steel cage match for the WWF title didn't main event for some reason. I have no idea. But this was a really awesome match. I would say probably the second best SummerSlam match of all time, and I'll get on to what is the best one later. But this was awesome stuff. Great storytelling as well. Probably the best steel cage match ever, and it didn't even have blood, which was very interesting. But yeah, just an awesome matchup. Brett and Owen, definitely my favourite, one in my top 15 wrestlers of all time. Just great workers. The best feud of '94 easily, by country mile. And obviously you had Undertaker versus Undertaker in the main event. That sucked. Don't know why it main evented. I understand people would have bought the pay-per-view to see the Undertaker, quite a lot of people, but you could have just put it on second last. That's what I would have done anyway. But yeah, SummerSlam 1994 is a really fun show actually. Most underrated SummerSlam of all time. I think you should check it out if you haven't already seen it. But once again, we go on to a very, very poor SummerSlam, and that is SummerSlam 1995. Probably the third worst SummerSlam in my opinion. We'll get on to what the second worst is later, but this is just awful. I mean, granted you had you had the opener, which was a pretty good match between Hakushi and the 1-2-3 Kid. 1-2-3 Kid was a great worker at this time. He still was for quite a few years, but just had a great match with Hakushi, who was also another pretty underrated wrestler, but you know, he was given such a shite gimmick that he was never really going to go anywhere. But yeah, they had a solid opener, but oh my god, the undercard was just dreadful. Like, I know some people think that there's some underrated gems in this undercard. I really disagree. Like, I've seen some people say that Barry Horowitz versus Skip is a pretty good match. I never got into it. I thought it was pretty boring. Same with Bret Hart versus Isaac Yankem. I thought that was average at best. I mean, you had Triple H, Hunter S. Helmsley, sorry, would be later Triple H, taking on Bob Holly. I mean, just like, oh god. And then what else? You had Alundra Blaze versus Bertha Faye, and that was, oh my god. And Smoking Guns versus the Blue Brothers. Like, oh, these matches were just awful and a pain to sit through. The ladder match for the IC title, I believe, should have gone on last. This was an amazing match. Well, not quite as good as the WrestleMania 10 match between these same guys, Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, but it was pretty darn close, if I'm being honest. And I mean, yeah, this was great. And then the main event just stunk up the joint. Diesel versus Mabel. This was terrible. It was only 9 minutes. It was probably the worst. It's the worst SummerSlam main event of all time. Just awful, awful, awful. And Kevin Nash, Diesel, has gone on record saying that he believes that Shawn and Razor should have main evented, but the WWF wanted the title to go on last. But yeah, this was a train wreck of a match, and Mabel's push was. I was stopped after this, and for good reason. He should have never have won King of the Ring. I mean, I respect him and everything. I know he died a few years ago, and rest in peace and everything. But he was never cut out to be a main eventer, in my opinion. It doesn't really get much better, if I'm being honest. SummerSlam 1996 was only slightly better. I mean, this was not that great. I mean, the opener between Owen Hart and Savio Vega was solid, I guess, but you know, I wouldn't tell you to go out of your way and look for it. I think you had some pretty atrocious undercard matches, like the 4-way for the tag titles. I remember Goldust and Mark Mera had a pretty forgettable match. Crap, I've just forgotten. Oh, Jake the Snake Roberts versus Jerry Lawler. Oh my god, this was awful. Oh my god, I personally, I never really liked the way they built this match up with like Lawler making fun of Jake Roberts' drinking problems. Like, I just thought that was pretty bad thing to do. And as someone who's kind of, had family members, suffer from alcohol problems, it was not, something that I wanted to see, really. So yeah, that, I wasn't offended by it, but I just thought, oh, come on, really? Like, I hate it when people, make fun of people having alcohol addictions, because it's really not something you want. But anyway, that's a completely different topic. But yeah, the undercard was just very forgettable, honestly. There was nothing really that good until the last two matches, where you had the Boiler Room Brawl between Mankind and Undertaker. This was really good. First ever Boiler Room Brawl, I believe. If that's wrong, I apologise. But yeah, this was fun. And you have the surprise heel turn. Paul Bearer turning on the Undertaker, and he'd been with the Undertaker for since he came in, so 6 years, I believe. That would be about right. But yeah, this was a shock. And then he joined and sided with Mankind, and Mankind won the match, because basically to win the match you had to take possession of the urn by getting out of the Boiler Room. And yeah, this was a good match. This is a really good match. I enjoyed it. The main event was between Shawn Michaels and Diesel. This was actually a really good match. I mean, Vader, actually a very good worker for a big man, and he showed it with Shawn Michaels, arguably the best worker in the WWE, WWF. I think Vader should have gone over here, because at this time you were really lacking in star power. Like, they were trying to build up Austin at this time, but he wasn't even on this card, so I never got that, to be honest. And I mean, the only top guys you had really at this time was Michaels and Bret Hart, and Bret Hart was taking time off after that Iron Man match, and I think having Vader winning it could have really helped build him up. And unfortunately, he never really recovered from this. And then, as I mentioned in my review, a couple of years later, he'd go on to call himself a fat piece of shit. So what does that say? Like, that's just sums up the fall of Vader. So avoid SummerSlam 1996 except for the last two matches, really, if I'm being honest. Next, a really good show, definitely one of the best SummerSlams of all time, probably definitely in the top 5. 1997, a great show. No bad matches on here at all. I mean, the worst match was probably Legion of Doom versus the Godwins, but that wasn't even that bad. That was average at worst. So yeah, this is a really good show. You could check it all out if you wanted to, but some of the memories from here, like the steel cage match, that was great. Mankind and Triple H just tearing it up. My opinion, best SummerSlam opener. Just awesome stuff. Great moment with Mankind doing the elbow drop off the top of the steel cage. That was awesome. You had the IC title, which was actually a really good match, but the match kind of gets overlooked because of the Austin neck break injury from the pile driver. But they finished the match. Like, Austin rolled him. I mean, it was the worst roll up in the history of roll ups, but the guy broke his neck. What do you expect, you know? So yeah, Austin won the IC title with a broken neck, and I just think this match helped Stone Cold look like the toughest, son of a bitch in the WWF at this time. So I think that this actually kind of helped his character. I know that's a bit of a horrible thing to say since he broke his neck, but I would say that this was actually in some ways helped Austin's career. And obviously the main event between Undertaker and Bret Hart, really good match. Shawn Michaels special guest referee, and if Shawn Michaels interfered on behalf, cost Bret Hart the match, if he didn't call it, if he showed favoritism towards the Undertaker, Shawn Michaels would never wrestle again, or wrestle in America. I remember, and then if Bret didn't win the title, he would never wrestle in America again. So you kind of knew Bret was going over here. And obviously you had the moment where Shawn Michaels hits Undertaker with the chair accidentally, costs in the match. Bret Hart pins him, wins, and this has set up the great Shawn Michaels Undertaker feud in '97. So yeah, this is a really fun show to check out. Nothing awful on the show. You could literally just watch it all and be satisfied. One of the best SummerSlams of all time, in my opinion. Great in-ring stuff and great moments. What else can be said? Next, going to the second best SummerSlam of all time, and for a while it was probably the best, and for a few years it probably was the best SummerSlam. 1998. This is awesome. Peak of the Attitude Era. This sums up why the Attitude Era was so good. This is like a classic Attitude Era show. You had a great opener between Val Venus and D'Lo Brown. D'Lo Brown defending the European title. This was a really good match. They actually were given quite a lot of time as well. You had D'Lo Brown. Yep. Alright. Get disqualified because Val Venus pushed the referee, because Val Venus went to go to the top rope with D'Lo's chest protector on, but basically the ref tried to stop him and put his hands on him, so Val Venus pushed him back. And yeah, so D'Lo retained via DQ, but it was still a really good match though, to be honest. Definitely one of the more underrated SummerSlam matches. And then you had the hair versus hair match between X-Pac and Jeff Jarrett. This is a pretty good match. This is a pretty good match as well. I mean, I've given Jeff Jarrett quite a bit of crap in some of my reviews. I mean, I've called him a Memphis mid-card piece of shit, because he is. I'm sorry. This guy was never supposed to main event. This guy is not a main eventer, whether he believes it or not. He's never drew a dime in his life, despite being TNA and WCW World Champ. That's what I believe. But yeah, I mean, he is, to be fair, he is a good in-ring worker. I mean, as proved with a match against X-Pac, he had a pretty solid matchup. And it was great to see him get his head shaved bald. I was a big fan of that. So yeah, that was a pretty solid match. Another underrated SummerSlam match, and the underrated SummerSlam matches continue in this pay-per-view when we had the Lion's Den match. Ken Shamrock fighting Owen Hart inside I believe it was the Octagon. They called it a Lion's Den match. This was fun. I mean, it was the first of its kind. Ken Shamrock got the win when I believe I think Owen Hart. What was the name of Owen Hart's trainer for this match? What was it called? Dan the Beast Severn. Yeah, I believe he threw in the towel, but I don't know if that meant Owen gave up, because he threw in the towel, or Owen gave up shortly after. I can't remember which one, but yeah, Shamrock won. And yeah, it was a really fun matchup. Then we had the IC title. This was the best match of the night, ladder match. Awesome stuff. The Rock versus Triple H. This was a well-built feud at the time. You could really tell that WWF at the time were angling these guys to be future top stars, featuring them very well in the build-up to this match. They actually had a pretty good match. They had a really good match at Fully Loaded in the 2 out of 3 Falls match, and Triple H had the match won, but the 30-minute time limit expired. So yeah, that was So this was kind of the feud settler, I guess. Triple H won, but unfortunately he got an injury. I can't remember whether it was in this match or after the match or before, but not long after that he lost the IC title and was on the shelf for a bit. But yeah, this is a really awesome match, one of the best SummerSlam matches. Probably the second best IC title match behind Bulldog and Brett. The main event was really good as well, actually. Steve Austin versus Undertaker. Really good fighting match. They fought everywhere, even though it wasn't a no DQ stipulation. You had Undertaker dive through the table. That was incredible as well. Yeah, and you had Austin win the matchup, and Undertaker showing him respect. And I think this obviously Austin was kind of top star at the time, but I think this really cemented him as a top star by having him beat one of a really experienced veteran in The Undertaker. SummerSlam 1998, check out the show, it's an awesome show. Nothing really that bad on here apart from this one match on the mid-card with the Oddities facing Kaientai, but that was still kind of fun to watch, I guess. So yeah, you also had on this show like Mankind defending the tag titles by himself against the New Age Outlaws. That was pretty good as well. I'm just trying to think of, you had a good mixed tag as well. Just check out the whole show, it's really awesome, really fun. That's what I have to say, really. SummerSlam 1999 was a pretty solid show as well. You had solid in-ring matches. There were only kind of really 2 standout matches. The Love for Oliva Greenwich Street fight between Test and Shane. This was really awesome, actually. One of the most underrated SummerSlam matches. Basically, it was Test. If he lost this match to Shane, he would leave Stephanie McMahon, his sister. And if he won, he could continue dating her, and Test won in a really fun street fight. Yeah, I would definitely check out this match. Main event was also pretty good as well. Austin defending the title against Mankind and Triple H. I believe the original plan was Triple H to... what was weird was the history of the match, like the build-up to the match. The match kept changing. Like, it was originally supposed to be Chyna versus Austin, but then it got changed to Mankind versus Austin, and then Triple H beat Mankind and stuff. So it was then made into a triple threat, and Triple H, I believe, was supposed to go over in this matchup, but Austin didn't want to drop the title to him because he didn't believe he was ready. So basically what they did was Austin said he'd drop the title to Mankind, so he did, and then the next night on Raw, Mankind drops to Triple H. So yeah, that's basically why Mankind won the title. It was a bit weird, and I think personally Triple H should have won it, because his first title reign wasn't that memorable because he won it on an episode of Raw as War. But yeah, you had some other solid matchups on here. Like, you had another Lions Den match, not really as good as the first one, kind of because we'd seen it before. They made like a weapons match. It was alright. Like, it was average. It was okay, but I don't really get how it ended. Like, Ken Shamrock beat the shit out of Steve Blackman, and then yeah, that was basically it. Like, and then Shamrock stood on top of the Lions Den and celebrated. It was a bit weird. The Rock versus Billy Gunn was pretty fun as well, and he had Billy Gunn kiss the ass of this woman, this really fat woman. It was a bit strange. Tag Turmoil was pretty fun as well. The tag team title match with Kane and X-Pac defending against the Unholy Alliance, that was pretty good too as well. So yeah, SummerSlam 99 is a pretty solid show, actually. Check it out. 2000 followed, and this was a really strange show because you had 3 awesome matches on here, but the undercard was pretty poor for the most part, to be honest. But you had the 2 out of 3 Falls match between Bill and Warren Jericho. That was great. one of their weaker matches in the kind of series of matches they had, but still a really good match. So I'm not going to complain. With Benoit going over the TLC matchup, that was awesome. One of the great SummerSlam matches of all time. This is awesome. Edge and Christian retaining their tag titles. I know a lot of people complain about Edge and Christian winning the matches, all of them, but personally, I never minded. But obviously, that's gonna be a bit biased because I was, Edge and Christian, favorite tag team. What more can be said, really? And the main event I thought was really good. Actually, I know a lot of people don't like it and stuff, and I know Kurt Angle suffered a concussion, so he couldn't really do that much. But I thought it was a pretty fun match. I mean, I wish at times they'd focused more about the title than Stephanie McMahon. But yeah, I thought it was a good match, to be honest. And who could forget the hardcore match where Shane McMahon took this insane fall? He was fighting Steve Blackman for the hardcore title. He was defending it, and Shane climbed up to the top of one of the things, and Blackman hit him with a cane quite a few times, and literally Shane just fell I don't even know how many feet, but it was so far. He literally just fell. It was insane to see. But I guess SummerSlam 2000 is a good show due to the 3 matches. But I would definitely say check out those 3 matches especially. So yeah. Next we move on to 2001. And usually when you think of 2001, you think of one thing. Well, 2 things. The awesome WrestleMania 17 show, which is understandable, or the shitty invasion angle that occurred at this time. And this was right in the middle of it. But this was actually a really good show in terms of wrestling. You had some really good matches on here, like Edge and Lance Storm in a fairly underrated SummerSlam matchup. Hardcore ladder match between Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy. That was pretty awesome, actually, to be fair. Austin defending the title against Angle, match of the night. You really sympathise with Kurt Angle in this match because he had the match won, but because Austin hit so many referees, the WCW ref disqualified Steve Austin, so he held onto the title, and Angle put him in the ankle lock, I believe. So yeah, that really helped get Kurt Angle over as a babyface. And the main event between Rock and Booker T, I thought was pretty good. I mean, I think it was pretty good. I mean, I think it could have been better, but it was good for what, it was a pretty good match, I would say, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I mean, I would say the only negative thing was that this was during a shit time for the WWF, really. But SummerSlam 2001 is a really good wrestling show, I would say. If you just look for wrestling, no real and you don't want to think really about storylines and stuff, this is the perfect show for you, I guess. Now we come on to my favourite SummerSlam of all time, 2002. This was an incredible show. I really don't see this show ever being topped. I just think the star power on this show was just insane. You had Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio in the opener, which is awesome. One of the best openers in SummerSlam history. Edge and Eddie Guerrero in a very good match, and they would go on to have better matches. So that kind of shows how well these guys worked. The IC title match between Benoit and RVD, again, I'd say probably just behind the Demolition Heart Foundation match. Probably second most underrated SummerSlam match of all time. This was awesome, in my opinion. Great back and forth stuff with RVD capturing the IC title. You also had the comeback of Shawn Michaels against Triple H in my favourite SummerSlam match of all time. I thought this was awesome. Great moment seeing Shawn Michaels come back and win his first match. I would definitely say this is one of the best SummerSlam moments, just behind Davey Boy winning the IC title. So yeah, just an incredible matchup. This is originally just supposed to be a one-off thing, but eventually Shawn Michaels had another match at the Elimination Chamber, and just continued in the WWE, which is great. So you got another good 8 years of Shawn Michaels in the WWE. Main event was awesome. I mean, you had Brock Lesnar beat The Rock. At this time, they were really pushing Brock Lesnar as the next guy of the WWE. Unfortunately, he would only leave a couple of years later. So this, unfortunately, but this was a great match with The Rock. really showed him that he was going to be the guy in the WWE. Yeah, what more can I say? And just SummerSlam 2002 is a really good show in general. Nothing really I can complain about. Like, I think the worst match on here was probably Undertaker versus Test, but that was still a pretty decent match. So I honestly can't complain because there's nothing bad on this show. So definitely check out SummerSlam 2002. Of all the SummerSlams, if you haven't seen any SummerSlams and you're saying which one should, like, I really go out of my way to find, 2002, awesome show. We then move on to 2003, which I think the show kind of gets a bit too much hate because I think the undercard was fairly solid, and you had three good to great matches, in my opinion. Like, for example, you had the US title 4-way with Eddie Guerrero defending against Chris Benoit, Rhino, and Tajiri. This was pretty good. This was actually a pretty underrated SummerSlam match. Obviously, Eddie retaining the US title. This was just a really fun matchup, in my opinion. Kind of showing the star and power and quality of SmackDown's mid-card, really. Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle had a really, really good WWE title match. It wasn't as good as probably their other matches, but still really good. I think this match is kind of underlooked because it's not as good as their other matches that they had, but still great, in my opinion, I think. Match of the night and some great stuff in here. The main event for the world title, I think it's hard to kind of it's one of those matches where I think it's a good match overall. Like, I think, like, especially when Michaels was wrestling Jericho and Orton, and and obviously, like, Goldberg cleaning house, that was awesome as well. Like, spearing Jericho through the pod and just eliminating everyone essentially. Yeah, that was just awesome. And then you had but then the last few minutes were a bit kind of, oh really, like, Goldberg gets hit in the face with a sledgehammer, Triple H pins him. Yeah, this was just really annoying for me anyway. I just think Goldberg should have gone over here. The crowd was so behind him in this matchup as well. And Triple H had the groin injury at this time as well, so why couldn't he have dropped the title and took some time off? And he could have won the title when he came back. I never got why they did that. I mean, originally it was supposed to be Triple H versus Goldberg at SummerSlam, but because of Triple H's groin injury, they made it an elimination chamber match, and he came out last. And he wore these really weird, like, trunks. They were like, how usually Triple H's trunks are kind of like, they're literally like pants, or if you're American, underwear. But like these were like shorts, really. They like went just above his knees, and it looked really weird and awkward. They had to wear them because of the groin injury. But yeah, I mean, this is a good show for me. I think the undercard's pretty solid. Like, the only thing I'd really say was that bad was Shane versus Eric Bischoff. I mean, Undertaker and A-Train had an okay match. Dudley Boyz and La Resistance had a pretty solid opener. I'm just trying to remember some of the other matches from that show. Excuse me 1 second. Yeah, as I said, US title 4-way, WWE title. Kane and RVD had a pretty decent no DQ match. So yeah, I like SummerSlam 2003. Kind of just above the top, just missed out on the top 10, but no, I think it's a good show personally. We then move on to 2004. This was this was a solid show as well. I think the undercard is pretty solid for the most part, and you had two really good to great matches, like Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle. That was a really good match. It wasn't as good as some of their other matches, like on SmackDown of that year. And no, I think it was 2005. Was it 2005 or 2004? They had that SmackDown match. I can't remember, but they also had a really good match at WrestleMania 20 as well. But yeah, this was probably slightly weaker, but still a really good match. I think Angle getting his win back was probably good, and Eddie didn't look weak at all by tapping out the ankle lock. Good little match here. Obviously, Orton winning the world title from Benoit, becoming the youngest world champion. Essentially, it was just a fuck you to Brock Lesnar, who'd left earlier that year, taking away that credential of being the youngest world champion. That was basically the reason. And then Orton would drop the belt to Triple H. So yeah, this win actually was kind of pointless. But one thing I do want to say is the finish to the world title match in the main event. It was actually really well done. Like, I don't think this gets enough credit, but the way Orton won the match, so well done. Like, he won it clean, obviously, with an RKO, but the way he did, I think Benoit went to do a maneuver, but basically he kind of cost himself the match, and it was kind of like Orton was better for that split second, wrestled him better for that split second where he turns one of Benoit's moves into the RKO, and that was just so well done. I love that finish, and yeah, that's how Orton hits that RKO and wins the world title. So that finish is awesome, in my opinion. I just love the way it was executed. But yeah, I mean, you also had like a solid opener. The IC title, fairly underrated matchup as well. Triple H and Eugene was fun. The only match I could really complain about was maybe Cena and Booker T, but they're only given like 5 minutes, so I can't really say that much. But yeah, SummerSlam 2004 was a pretty solid show, pretty decent. I would say check out especially Eddie versus Kurt Angle and Benoit versus Orton. Then we come on to 2005. I think this is probably the most overrated SummerSlam. I mean, when I first saw the show, I felt as if there was something missing. If I'm being honest, like after watching that, I just think that show could have been more. I mean, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio had match of the night. You know, really fun, really good ladder match. I mean, for a stupid stipulation, the custody of Dominic. That was dumb, but this is still a really good match. You had Orton beat The Undertaker, which was pretty insane, actually. But it was an alright match. Like, I think it was not as good as their WrestleMania 21 match, but no, it was still fairly good. It was alright. Jericho versus Cena. This is a match where you can really see the tide start to turn for Cena. He was getting a lot of stick in this match. The majority of the crowd was cheering for Jericho despite being the heel, but Cena retains because Jericho was leaving, and he got fired the next day after he lost the second match to Cena on Raw. So yeah, that was it really. I mean, yeah, Sorry, I just kind of blanked out there. And then the main event, definitely the most overrated SummerSlam match of all time. So underwhelming, in my opinion. I just could never take this match seriously. And it's not just because Hogan was really old at this time and Shawn Michaels, was an active and great in-ring wrestler. But it was also just the overselling from Shawn Michaels as well. I think that was a bit, that just killed it for me, in my opinion. And I just never really bought Hogan winning either, in my personal opinion. And, yeah. So SummerSlam 2005 is an okay show. I just felt, when we finished watching it, I felt kind of underwhelmed. I was just kind of like, I just felt like that show was lacking something. I think the mid-card was pretty poor as well. Like, Edge and Matt Hardy had a really underwhelming 5-minute match. You had Kurt Angle versus Eugene. You had Orlando Jordan getting squashed by Benoit in like 25 seconds, and it's just, the undercard was a bit of a mess in my opinion. So that kind of what hinders SummerSlam 2005 for me. It doesn't get much better. 2006, just an average show really. The undercard was pretty meh, I mean, I'm not really going to say much about the undercard because I don't really want to talk about it because it's pretty poor. Mick Foley and Ric Flair had a really good I Quit match, to be fair, and Cena and Edge had a reasonably good match actually. I think they went on to have better matches and stuff. They went on to have worse matches as well. So I would say this SummerSlam match was kind of in the middle of in terms of Edge and Cena matches. Yeah, it was fine. It was a solid main event. Edge retaining in Cena's hometown. I was fine with that as an Edge fan, obviously. Bit pissed off that he dropped it in the TLC match the next month at the time, but what are you going to do? So yeah, SummerSlam 2006, you don't really have to watch the show really. I mean, maybe check out the I Quit match and the WWE title match, but everything else is pretty meh. Like, you had an average tag with DX and the McMahons, Booker T and Batista for the world title. And yeah, I'm not going to say much about 2006. But 2006 looks like a gem compared to 2007. 2007 was awful. Definitely in the top 5 worst SummerSlams, no doubt about it. I mean, the only real standout moment here was Cena and Orton in a good main event, and the best match that they've ever had, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but what about the I Quit match? What about the Iron Man match? I never really cared for either match really. I thought they were really overrated personally. I think this is their best match at SummerSlam 2007. And then you had the return of Rey Mysterio and Triple H. I mean, Rey had a probably the second best match of the night against Chavo. I mean, that was solid, I guess. Better than the 2006 match, but it's not really saying that much. And then Triple H squashed Booker T in a TV match. I really would have liked to have seen Triple H have a classic matchup here in his return match, but he just squashed Booker T, and Booker T was gone within a few months anyway. So you could really tell that Booker T did not want to do the job. And I don't blame him too much, because Triple H had beaten him at 19 and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't blame Booker for leaving and not really wanting to do the job for Triple H. Everything else in the show was forgettable. I mean, Carly and Batista had one of the worst SummerSlam matches, one of the worst world title matches in the history of the WWE and in SummerSlam and just in general. So, missed 2007, except for the main event. That's all I'm going to say, really. But luckily, 2008 really stepped up. This was a great show. You had a underrated and pretty good world title match with CM Punk taking on JBL. JBL really helped Punk look like a credible world champion. And this was actually a pretty solid match. I liked it. I think it's, Punk's reign was a bit of a flop, the first one, but, this was one of the kind of bright spots of his reign, really. And Carly, Great Carly, would have his best match ever, I believe. I'd probably have to re-watch some of his other matches, but probably his best match with Triple H here at SummerSlam for the WWE title. I mean, it wasn't even it was an okay match, but by Carly's standards, this was amazing. Triple H did a good job in being the ring general, leading through the match and stuff. So yeah, this was a good match actually. You had the Michaels and Jericho promo. That was awesome. Usually I'm not a fan of promo segments on pay-per-views. I think they kind of just, I just think you could have more wrestling time. But this was, this was a really good segment. Hell, obviously they didn't want to have a match here at SummerSlam because the card was just stacked really with huge matches. But so they angled it where Shawn Michaels said he was going to retire, but then Jericho came out and said he wouldn't let Shawn Michaels retire until he admitted Jericho retired him, and then basically ended up in Chris Jericho was supposed to kayfabe punch Shawn Michaels' wife, but then he actually did punch her in the face by accident, which was crazy. But it actually helped with the realism, in my opinion. But Shawn Michaels' wife was cool about it, apparently, and everything. But a great segment in SummerSlam, actually. And then you had, for the first time ever, Cena versus Batista. Pretty good, a solid matchup, actually. A really good, I would say. I think this was a way to get Cena off TV, but doing the neck injury thing. Because I believe Cena had already got the neck injury, and that Batista bomb thing was like to give a reason for the neck injury. I think that's what happened. So yeah, Batista beat Cena after the Batista bomb after the supposed net breaking Batista bomb. So yeah, that was a really good match, and the main event was awesome. Edge versus Undertaker, the blow off match. This awesome. I really enjoyed this matchup. One of the best SummerSlam matches. I think it's one of those matches where both guys looked great. They went to town on each other. They hit each other with everything in the book. Edge, hit the Undertaker with everything he had, but couldn't put him away. Undertaker even stole Edge's spear, which was pretty interesting. And yeah, this is just an awesome, awesome match. I never get tired of watching this match, and I never will in the future. So SummerSlam 2008 is a really good show. You have some really good stuff on here, and some surprising stuff as well, like a solid opener with MVP and Jeff Hardy and Carly probably having his best match and everything. So yeah, this was definitely a good show. Just misses out on the top 5 though, but great show. We now move on to the 2009 edition of SummerSlam. I would say this is a good show, but there is some of the stuff on here that pissed me off, like Regal and Christian for the ECW title going 9 seconds. That was dumb. Just dumb. The Cena and Orton match, that was dumb as well, with the constant restarts, and that pissed me off. But yeah, you had some really good stuff on here as well, actually, like the opener for the IC title, Ziggler versus Rey Mysterio. Awesome. Very underrated as well, actually. At this time, you know, Rey Mysterio's pulling out some really good matches in 2009. You know, with Jericho before Ziggler at this time period. And yeah, I really enjoyed this opener. DX versus Legacy, Shawn Michaels' first match since the match at WrestleMania 25 against The Undertaker. So obviously DX had to go over here on Legacy, which is fine because, you know, DX would put over Legacy at breaking point in a yeah, and this match was pretty good actually. I think it's one of those solid tag matches that any SummerSlam card would, you know, deserves, you know, is worthy of having. So this is a worthy SummerSlam matchup, definitely underrated as well. Yeah, and it was a really good matchup as well. We had the main event for the world title, the TLC matchup between Punk and Jeff Hardy, the blow-off. Awesome TLC match. CM Punk captures the world title. The Undertaker returns and chokeslams Punk, and then that started a new feud with Punk and the Undertaker. So yeah, 2009 is a really good show as well. I'd definitely say check that out, especially those 3 matches I just mentioned. Yeah, but then we take a massive swan dive with the second worst SummerSlam of all time, in my opinion. I hate this show. 2010. This was a train wreck, and you know, this was. I just think that there's nothing really that good here on this show, aside from the main event. But even I think that is overrated to a degree. I mean, maybe it was just the fact of Cena and his, you know, Team WWE essentially squashing the next. I think that's kind of what hindered my enjoyment of that match. But I can never really get into it. I mean, I liked, you know, Daniel Bryan kicking ass and stuff, but I still think Nexus should have gone over here because they hadn't even been in the company for that long, and you had Team WWE beat them. It was dumb, and even Edge and Cena and Jericho have agreed that Nexus should have gone over. But yeah, the rest of the card was just pretty boring. Like Orton and Sheamus had a boring match for the WWE title. Rey Mysterio and Kane had the second best match, which kind of tells you something if they're having the second best match at night. That was decent, I guess, but the Straight Edge Society versus the Big Show. Like, the Big Show beat the Straight Edge Society. That was dumb. I didn't get that. And then you had WWE Diva Cameron's favourite match of all time, Melina versus Alicia Fox, in a 5-star classic. Well, obviously not. It was pretty bad, in my opinion. Have I missed I feel like I've missed a match from the card. Oh, of course, the opener. Ziggler and Kofi. Starting off having a really good matchup for about 6 minutes in. Nexus just come in, beat them up. For what reason, I have no idea. It was dumb. And this show is just dumb. I don't watch it. Like, I wouldn't even say watch the main event, because it just for me it brings back memories and pisses me off, if anything. So you can skip SummerSlam 2010. I mean, it's not 1990 bad, but it's kind of bad. 2011 though is a really good show. Yeah, Daniel Bryan and Wade Barrett having a pretty underrated SummerSlam match, actually. I would definitely say check that out. It's kind of a forgotten gem, but no, it's pretty good, I would say. You had some other good stuff in the undercard, like Kelly and Beth Phoenix actually had a surprisingly good Divas title match. Sheamus and Mark Henry had a surprisingly good match as well. The opener was solid. Orton and Christian, match of the night. Awesome, no holds barred matchup. Orton doing the RKO on the stairs, that was great. Yeah, can't complain with that. WWE title match between Cena and Punk, that was really good as well. On par with Orton and Christian, but I just don't think just as good. I think once they really started kicking in, like, the match was over, which is a shame. And I never got why Cena had to put his foot on the rope at the finish. That was dumb as well. Pissed me off. And then you had Punk won, which is good, and then Kevin Nash comes out and beats him up, and then jackknifes him, and then Del Rio cashes in. It was just kind of, you know, just annoying and dumb on so many levels. But no, it was a good SummerSlam. I think you had some good matches on here. But the Del Rio cash-in and Kevin Nash interfering, it's just kind of leave it on a bit of a sour note, if I'm being opinion. But no, check out SummerSlam 2011 if you haven't. Now we go on to SummerSlam 2012. I really don't have that much to say about this show. Like, it's not like it's bad. It's not a bad show. Like, there's solid matches on it. Like, there's nothing that bad on here. There's nothing that spectacular either. It's just the kind of middle of the park SummerSlam. I mean, the opener is the only thing I can really talk about here, because Ziggler and Jericho had a really good match. Apart from that, it was just kind of, there were good matches on here, but they weren't memorable. Like, I remember I had to watch the main event between Triple H and Brock Lesnar again a few weeks ago, because I just couldn't remember the match. Like, I hadn't watched it since 2012, and like I literally remembered nothing about that match. It was so forgettable. So I watched it, and yeah, it's just an okay match, but I really expected more. I just don't think these guys ever really could click in the ring. I mean, they had some solid match at Mania 29 and Extreme Rules, but they never really had a really good match or a classic, which is a shame. But yeah, SummerSlam 2012 was an alright show. You don't have to check it out. Maybe check out Ziggler versus Jericho. That's about it, really. 2013. This is a great show. Top 3, right at number 3 in my SummerSlam great of all time list. You had some really awesome stuff on here. Christian versus Alberto Del Rio for the world title. Very underrated. I actually remember when I watched this pay-per-view live at the time, I remember getting pissed off with Alberto Del Rio winning. So I remember I really wanted Christian to hold the world title, because I don't know, I really wanted Christian to kind of have a legit, not a kind of long-term run, because when he won in 2011, he held it for like 5 days and then a month, and then that was about it. But I would have liked to have seen him hold it for like a couple of months or so. So that's why I wanted him to win. But I was a bit pissed off that he tapped out to Del Rio. But it was a good match overall, actually. Punk and Lesnar stole the show. Awesome, no holds barred match. Punk still looked pretty good in defeat. I mean, he was dominated for most of the match, but he showed signs of fighting, and he was beaten by Lesnar. Paul Heyman interference. But yeah, no, this is a really good match. One of the best SummerSlam matches of all time. One of the best SummerSlam matches of recent memory as well. WWE title, great match, great moment with Daniel Bryan capturing the WWE title. I remember being really happy seeing him capture the title, yesing in my sitting room. And then Randy Orton comes out, and I'm like, oh, this is just a bit of tension. And then he turns around, Triple H pedigrees him, and then Orton cashes and wins. I was just shocked, and I was pretty pissed off as well, which was a good way to get heat for a Randy Orton heel turn. And this is the birth of the Authority, which at the time was an interesting idea, but now it's just kind of, can you just go away. Now we're on to this last year's SummerSlam. Really good show, solid wrestling all around, I would say. The lumberjack match between Rollins and Ambrose, that was probably the best lumberjack match I've ever seen. They really shouldn't have had a good match, really, considering the stipulation, but they brought out the best of that stipulation and brawled everywhere, and yeah, a really good matchup, I would say. And of course, in the main event, Cena getting squashed, that was incredible. Like, I remember watching it at the time, just being so surprised and shocked, and just kind of, oh crap, man, like, is this actually happening? And then Lesnar winning, and just being so shocked at the finish. So yeah, it was a pretty solid show around, in my opinion. I would definitely say check out those two matches as well. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed that SummerSlam history of SummerSlam and SummerSlam memories. I hope you stuck to the end. If you do, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe.